Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to try to look at the Russia-Ukraine conflict from a different angle, an angle we don't often get to hear much about, in Western media at least, and that's the Russian side.
Okay.
Our listeners want to understand things better, and, well, we found something pretty interesting, a sneak peek at Tucker Carlson's upcoming interview with the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergey Lavrov.
Wow. That's a big get for him.
It is, and he's really framing this whole thing as a way to get around what he's calling a media blackout.
Yeah.
On alternative viewpoints.
Mm.
He comes out strong, too, saying that the U.S. is sleepwalking into a nuclear war with Russia.
That's a pretty serious accusation.
Yeah, and a war, he says, most Americans aren't even aware is happening.
Oh, wow.
And he really goes after the Biden administration, saying they launched missiles into Russia and haven't, kept up any kind of dialogue, which makes de-escalation really difficult.
Mm.
He even claims that the U.S. government blocked him from interviewing Zelensky.
Huh. What do you think about this whole media blackout idea?
Well, it's certainly provocative, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
He's definitely tapping into something that's been building for a while, this feeling that the mainstream media isn't giving us the whole picture.
Right.
Whether it's an actual, intentional blackout is debatable, I guess. But there's no question this conflict is complicated, and there are a lot of different narratives floating around.
Absolutely.
That's why hearing Lavrov's perspective firsthand could be so important.
Yeah, it could be really valuable.
Okay, so for those who might not be totally familiar with him, who is Sergey Lavrov, and why are his views so important?
Well, Lavrov's not just Russia's foreign minister. He's been in that position for almost 20 years.
Wow.
Just think about that. He's been there through the fall of the Soviet Union, the expansion of NATO, Putin's rise to power.
He's seen a lot.
He has, and his perspective is shaped by all of that history. So understanding his views is key to understanding where Russia stands today.
Carlson doesn't waste any time. He goes straight for the tough questions, asking Lavrov point blank, how close are we to a major conflict between the U.S. and Russia?
That's the question on everyone's mind, isn't it?
I think so, and Carlson doesn't stop there. He also asked Lavrov about the chances of bringing Russia back into the Western sphere of influence. Like, how would that even work at this point?
Right.
And then there's the big what if. Could Trump coming back into power change the direction of this conflict?
Those are some heavy questions.
Definitely. But before we get into Lavrov's answers,
I
think it's important to step back and think about why this matters to the everyday person listening to us right now. What's at stake here?
Well, this isn't just some far-off geopolitical game. We're all feeling the effects already. The global economy is taking a hit, energy prices, supply chain disruptions, you name it, and that's just the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, the very real threat of nuclear war that affects every single person on this planet.
Absolutely.
That's why it's so crucial to understand these different perspectives.
I totally agree.
And it's not just, the immediate dangers we have to think about. This whole conflict has really exposed some major cracks in how the world works,
Right.
It makes you wonder about the future of these global alliances, what role international organizations will play, and where the power really lies in the 21st century.
It does feel like we're at a real turning point.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've kind of set the scene. We know who the players are, and we get how high the stakes are.
Yeah.
Let's dig into some of the actual interview.
Yeah.
What did Lavrov say in response to some of those big questions?
Well, I don't want to give everything away, but I can tell you Lavrov's answers were really eye-opening.
Right.
He didn't just accept Carlson's idea of the U.S. being the aggressor. He pushed back, saying Russia is just protecting its own interests and its security.
Interesting.
And he emphasized the historical context of the conflict, too, going back to NATO expansion and what he sees as broken promises from the West.
He brought up NATO expansion, huh? That seems to come up a lot when Russia talks about this conflict. Why is that so important to their point of view?
It's fundamental, really. From Russia's perspective, NATO expanding eastward after the Cold War was a huge betrayal. They saw it as a direct threat to their safety, and they've been saying that for decades now.
Yeah.
Lavrov brought that up again in the interview, saying the West ignored those concerns, and that's what led to where we are today.
I see. So Carlson also asked about the possibility of Trump coming back as president and whether that could change how this conflict plays out. What was Lavrov's reaction to that?
He was pretty careful with his words, emphasizing that Russia respects how other countries run their elections.
Right.
But he did admit that Trump's approach to Russia was different from Biden's and kind of hinted that if Trump got back in, it could change the relationship between the U.S. and Russia.
Wow. That's a pretty big statement.
Yeah.
It sounds like Russia's keeping a close eye on U.S. politics and maybe sees his chance to shift the balance of power.
Oh, absolutely. It just goes to show how connected all of this is. Domestic politics, foreign policy, international relations, they're all tangled up. What happens in one area can have a huge impact on the rest of the world.
This interview really makes it clear how important it is to look at things from different angles, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's easy to get stuck in our own way of thinking and forget that other perspectives exist.
Exactly, and that's what makes these kinds of deep dives so valuable. We need to get out of our own bubbles and consider different viewpoints, even if they challenge what we think we know.
Right.
It's not about agreeing or disagreeing. It's about understanding what's motivating people, what their fears are, and how those things are driving the decisions being made on a global level.
And that leads us to something we're really passionate about here at the Deep Dive. Bridging those gaps in information and encouraging people to talk about these things in a well-informed way.
Definitely.
We believe everyone should have access to this kind of in-depth analysis, no matter who they are or what they believe. But to really do that well, we need your help. So we recently started a GoFundMe campaign.
Oh, yeah.
It's called Standing in the Gaps. And the idea is to help us grow our audience and make our content even better. I like it. Just imagine what we could do with some upgraded equipment, better webcams, studio quality mics, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. That would be
It would
amazing.
make a huge difference for sure.
It would let us really dive deeper into these complex topics, bring in more experts, create a richer experience for everyone listening.
Exactly. We want to make these conversations as engaging and easy to understand as possible. And with your support, we can take the deep dive to a whole new level.
Absolutely.
And look, even if you can't donate right now, just spreading the word about the campaign helps a ton.
For sure.
It's all about building a community.
Yeah.
People who are curious and want to explore the world from different perspectives.
It's about having these conversations, exchanging ideas. That's how we make sense of this crazy world we live in.
Yeah, and these days with so much information flying around and everyone's stuck in their own echo chambers, it's more important than ever.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm really curious, what are your takeaways from this preview of the Lavrov interview? What surprised you? What questions are you left with?
Yeah, what are you thinking about now?
We really encourage you to keep digging deeper. Go beyond the headlines, do your own research, read articles from different sources, listen to other podcasts.
Yes.
And most importantly, talk about these issues with people who have different views than you.
That's so important.
That's what the deep dive is all about. It's just the starting point for a much bigger exploration. And we're so glad you're here with us on this journey.
Me too.
Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time for another deep dive into something fascinating.